point blank, is BYU going woke?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Classes where he sends the students out to experience gender bending.
What?
Right? They've been indoctrinated with the religion of academia. The administration is skewed to that side in almost every department, not all of them.
Can't let niceness be our highest virtue.
You cannot just go through the spiral of silence.
College is the battleground of ideas, and if the liberals are coming and throwing down and the conservatives are hiding in the wilk going, I can't go out there because the Black Menace has brought a camera, grow a pair of balls and get your own camera and fight back.
You just did a podcast on BYU just straight up preaching Marxism as a tenet of scripture coming out of the Book of Mormon. I listened to a bunch of your clips of that insanity that went down in the HBLL room 1050 on October 12th by our friend Professor Pagan. By the way, how hilarious is it that the guy teaching Marxism, quoting the Book of Mormon's last name is Pagan? He might have been Professor Secular or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So, this is crazy town. I can't believe it. The first podcast I ever did with Cwic Media was a podcast titled "Woke BYU Professors Are Leading the Youth Astray?" ? And I couldn't believe it. I literally, utterly couldn't believe it. But now I've met 30 members that used to be lifetime donors to BYU, millionaires that used to give them tons of money. They said, I can't believe what's going on up there. They're not sending their kids anymore and they're not donating anymore. Is this just a vocal minority speaking hyperbolically, or is this evidence of some kind of shift in the ethos and the culture at BYU? What was this freaking talk where they literally, I heard them say the iniquity of the Book of Mormon should be understood as inequity, and basically the Book of Mormon now is a socialist document, for lack of a better term. So what happened there? And is this demonstrative of the mainstream, or is this just a flash in the pan?
It's neither. It's not the mainstream yet. It's not a flash in the pan. This happens over and over again at BYU. They focused on, the Kennedy Center focused a couple of years ago on Ibram Kendi's book that shows how to be an anti-racist. The only speakers you're ever going to see, especially in the social sciences, that are invited in are those that are on the hard left. Only the hard left.
Now, is that by design or by work ethic? Because both
by
being
design.
quoting.
No, it is by design. So you have to think to yourself, see, Professor Pagan is kind of a part, at least adjacent loosely to what we call Mormon studies. Okay. This isn't his first rodeo.
Does that sounds like gender studies, and these other studies majors that are complete and total garbage?
This is part of a Latino series that is being given by the College of Social Sciences.
So is this a function of the faculty at the College of Social Sciences selecting speakers? Okay.
Correct. So they pick him. And why do they pick him? Because he's already given speeches at other universities on Mormon studies, on the Book of Mormon, that are very similar to what he already said. So they already know exactly what he's going to say. That's why they chose him. And people need to understand that. It's not like, wow, where did this guy come from? What did he say? This is crazy.
But
okay, it is crazy, but understand the people in the college, the dean, and also who has to approve this, they chose him for a reason, because that's what they wanted to present to the students.
Okay, so I called up the university and I said, okay, I called up BYU speeches, called up info. I did some due diligence on this. After hearing the clips that you posted on your show, I wouldn't say I was aghast, but it raised my eyebrows. So I said, okay, well, I have two concerns. First off, I don't have a concern if somebody wanted to interpret scripture and say, this is evidence of the social gospel. And, Jesus was really a proto-Marxist and all that other crap. Like, fine, you can say that and you can justify it in scripture. And I don't have problems filling out the entire Harold B. Lee Library auditorium if you want to have that be your thesis. But if your administration is going to be promoting that or approving that, they better allow the dude that comes on and says, like, the Book of Mormon justifies nothing but North American capitalism and socialism is evil. You know what I'm saying? You better let the Rush Limbaughs and the Dennis Pragers show up if you're letting the Ibram X. Kendis show up so that there's balance of exposure. I'm fine with balance of exposure. But you say that it's by design, that these deans are the ones that choose and that they do not allow the conservatives to speak. So I called up and I asked, I said, okay, who approves these speeches? BYU Speeches says it's the individual dean. So I called up the dean's office, you know what I'm saying? It was a little bit after hours, so they weren't there, but I was given the name of Walker Padilla, who is supposedly the dean making that approval of the department and everything. And my curiosity is shared by Cwic here, because both of us have been party promoters and both of us have been involved politically. He was the head of the BYU Democrats. That was really offensive. He just left. Look at that, dude.
He heard Democrats and he was gone.
Like, I'm outie. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm just kidding. Is the air conditioning off now?
It's off now.
Okay, rock on. So anyway, so Cwic was head of BYU Democrats, okay? And then also I served in elected office as a Republican, okay? And I recognize if there's a blind spot for conservatives in this country, it's that they sit back and whine about what the liberals are doing in Hollywood, what the liberals are doing in Congress, but they never have a solution that they come up with. They just whine that that's not the way Ronald Reagan would have done it, but they don't provide a solution. And both of us have worked hard to, get parties going on campus, to get events going on campus. So is it that the conservatives just aren't showing up to party and the leftists are, or is it that there is an infrastructural problem with the administration that they're promoting leftist speakers without letting the right wingers who want to speak and are trying to speak gain a voice?
It's both.
Man, you always say it's both.
No,
I ask you every question. It's both.
Number one, the administration is skewed to that side.
Okay.
In almost every department, not all of them, but in almost every department in college, it is skewed to one side. And so what you end up with, like with a social sciences college, is you've got a group of the loudest, most radical professors and administration that are together, and they talk about, hey, wouldn't it be great to get Pagan? Did you hear what he talked about at Claremont? Let's get him out here. We need our students to hear this because they are pushing this. This is an agenda. This is what they want the students to learn. They need to unprogram the students from what they learn in their home. And I'm not saying this about the majority of the professors. I'm saying this about certain professors, and reprogram them with a different worldview. And that is what is happening.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So there's, for example, there's probably 8 professors in that college that are the most hardcore.
And do you have anything suggesting that they're doing their best to keep conservative voices from coming and speaking as well? Or is it just they have total control over who they pick and they are only inviting?
That's part of it, right? Who gets chosen as the dean to approve everything in the college, right? That's an important one. But number 2 is people are afraid. I know this firsthand. People are afraid to allow conservative voices to come in on BYU campus. Not everyone, but a number of people, they have passed on those opportunities because they're afraid of the pushback on campus.
Now, is that just their personal cowardice because they're betas, or is that because there actually is an infrastructural lash?
Would they lose their jobs, or is it
No, they would not lose their jobs. So and that's what I go over with. It's like you're not going to lose your job for sticking up for the gospel. It's just not going to happen.
Well, so here's my question.
But a number of people are afraid of that. I will tell you that a number of professors are afraid of that.
Well, is that their personal cowardice, or is that because there actually is it a people problem or a process problem? Is it a people problem because they're just a bunch of pansies and they don't know how to stand up for the freaking gospel? They don't know how to stand up for the values. They don't know how to stand up for pretty much anything because they're so comfortable at the top of the pride cycle?
Oh my
Or is it a process system because the bureaucracy does promote leftism and inhibit conservatism?
It's a process.
So it's a process problem.
It's a process issue, but it's not part of the process issue. Is what is embedded in it is that a number of professors are afraid for their jobs. They're afraid to speak up. At BYU,
is there any proof that a professor?
I have had, honestly, no less than 24 professors contact me and say, I don't use my name, but I am afraid to say something about this.
Now, are they afraid
all say the
because
same
Fox
thing.
News? Are they afraid because Fox News has filled their heads with a bunch of garbage about what academia is going to do to you if you raise your voice? Or is it because they've seen somebody else get fired and they have firsthand experience? Because there's plenty of beta conservatives out there, and we got a problem with beta conservatives, okay? And just because somebody says, oh, I'm afraid, doesn't mean that their actual fear is rational. So is this an irrational fear based off of stupid crap that they've read in the media? Or is it a rational fear because there's a history of professors who've wanted conservative speakers to speak that have been fired or have been given ill treatment?
I don't know of any history of professors that have been fired for that.
Okay, so they're betas.
I'm not going to say that. I'm just telling you that
that can't be
they're
the
afraid for their
only
job.
option, Carden.
Okay,
I'm just now look. Personally, I'm just trying to figure out what is the issue, because we live in an accusatory fog, and I have learned from all of the false accusations against me, against Cwic, against Brad, that everybody, like, cry bullyism is so real. This idea that, like, oh, I don't feel safe, so you have to change your doctrine and your values because I don't feel safe. And until my arbitrary belief about what safety is realized, I get to forever launch all of these bombs at you and call you a bad person, right? So I don't believe that we have to nurture somebody's personal psychosis. Now, if even I believe with your same values and you're supposedly conservative and I'm conservative, just because you say, oh, I don't feel safe speaking up, means that the situation you're in is not a safe situation to speak up in. So I'm just trying to figure out, is BYU a lost cause because it's been not a lost cause, but has it been corrupted by leftism to such a degree that conservatives cannot get a voice? Or is it just that conservatives who've been so spoiled by the bureaucracy and the paycheck of the church have been so unused to having to speak up that now when it's time to speak up, they don't. And instead of getting the guts to speak up, they try and say, oh, well, I'm afraid for my job.
I don't know the full answer to that. Here's one thing I would suggest you do. Go back and look. I did this a couple years ago.
Uh-huh.
Go back and look at all of the visiting speakers at BYU. And I'm not counting devotionals.
Yeah.
Outside of the devotional, even the other one, they do the forum, right? They do Tuesdays. They do a devotional on Tuesday, the following week a forum, following week a devotional. Go back and look at all of the speakers outside of the devotionals, and you're going to find something very interesting. You can go back 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and you're not going to find you're going to find people that are kind of moderate, that maybe are there because they're successful at something. But you're not going to find someone whose career is based on a political conservative expression.
Okay, so
you won't find it.
Point blank, is BYU going woke?
Absolutely.
Even since Worthland got changed out with who was the new president?
Reese.
Yeah.
Okay,
he's barely been in, so
it's been how long, right? It's been
he got brought in last summer.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes, absolutely.
Why are in the era of Trump, why are conservatives such like, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, this is so annoying.
Yeah, I'm editing that out.
It's like everything's going woke. Yeah, because he refused to do anything.
Well, so
I'm sorry, like, if a college is the battleground of ideas, and if the liberals are coming and throwing down and the conservatives are hiding in the wilk going, I can't go out there because the Black Menace has brought a camera, grow a pair of balls and get your own camera and fight back.
I'm with you, baby.
What is, because, like, I'm neither liberal or I'm literally my own thing, okay? I'm borderline an anarchist, so I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, yeah, it may be going woke. Well, I was on campus, had to withdraw because of the freaking attacks I was getting like crazy from the Restore the Honor Code leftist psychopaths and the Calvin Burke mob and the Evan Jones psychos. Okay, that I dealt with that, but I fought. Mm-hmm. I didn't just I freaking fought it.
Yeah.
And I saw thousands of these students hold a giant protest in front of the Wilk, and I saw the conservatives sitting down watching going, yeah, that's kind of weird. And I'm like, all right, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. They did nothing. Like, I'm sorry. BYU is only going woke because the conservatives refuse to fight back. Go get a bigger speaker. Go publicize your own event. Go do something. But just sitting with your tail between your legs going, well, I'm afraid, then I'm sorry. I never want to hear you teach a gospel lesson about Captain Moroni or Helaman ever again.
See, a lot of this, I think.
Amen, brother. Amen.
I think what has to happen is we have to get a student group to have Ed Thomas come out and discuss John Locke, economics,
and you've got the tie and the shirt for it
libertarianism
already.
Yeah.
You look like a skinny, handsome professor.
there you go.
You know what I'm saying? It's
good to
pretty
go, Ed.
awesome.
Misión Peru Lima Norte.
Yeah, your
Nice.
Spanish is horrible, but your
it is
tie
horrible.
is great.
There was a
So no, I'm just kidding.
I back on
Yeah.
Cwic's point. I think there is something of a, hey, let's take what's going on with this problem and figure out what we can actually do to move forward. Because if all that ever happens is we point at the problem and then criticize it for happening, but we don't do anything about it, then we're stuck. So I'm curious, Greg, do you have anything that you think would be a good solution for this? Like Cardin has brought up finding more conservative speakers coming. Would that be something that you think would be an acceptable alternative? Do you think, what do you think is the right solution towards this sort of a thing?
I don't know yet. Here's the problem, right? It's not just a BYU problem. You can't look at it that way. BYU doesn't live in a vacuum. If you're a professor at BYU and maybe you don't even plan on being there forever, your career is going to be hampered immensely if you are seen as some right-wing person. And so if I would do research, if I want to get published, if I want anything, right, you are held within a certain tight area of scrutiny. And a lot of it has to do with your politics. Now, it's not 100%, but it's pretty close.
So they might be inconvenienced by standing up for their faith.
Well, not just
poor
inconvenience.
people.
I think that Greg is making the point that it would tank their careers and harshly limit their ability to ever work
Then
anywhere
what a
else.
crappy industry to work in. Get out, do something else.
But then we lose all the conservative professors, right?
This is personal. I have spoken to these people.
So are they just waiting on Daddy Reese to come and save them all? Because I'm sorry, no one's coming to save you.
I don't know. But here's the problem, right? They've made a number of adjustments. So they've gone back, especially on the hiring side. For example, even within CES, they don't bring people in from the outside anymore. And that can harm things a little bit, but it's safer, right? So they only hire from within CES if you're going to go to become a religion teacher, right? Before, they've been bringing people in with PhDs from other places, bring them in, have them teach religion, and those people they've been indoctrinated with the religion of academia. And so there could be a lot of issues there. So they made that change. The second thing they've done is when they hire people, and in the ecclesiastical interviews that they have each year, it is now basically the same thing as a temple recommend.
Great.
So it's upped quite a bit as to what your commitment to the gospel.
Perfect.
Right? Now, how many people are going to actually answer that truthfully or justify certain answers? That's the question, right? The problem is, the people inside the university already, they're not going to go fire those people. They're just not going to do it because it looks really bad to them. They've got a lot of bad press from the September 6th, as an example.
Oh, that thing that happened in the 90s. Oh, boo-hoo.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the church is very sensitive to bad press. Very sensitive to bad press. And so look at what, Professor Bybee, who I've had issues with before, he just put out he does an exercise every year for one of his classes where he sends the students out to experience gender bending.
What?
Right?
Wait.
Yes. I want you to go out if you're a guy, and I want you to go out and act as, go get your nails painted. Go do that, do things that are, that you would find from the other gender. If you're a girl, go play basketball. Go wear some shorts or some cargo shorts. Go do, all these different things where it's like,
wait, there's a BYU professor telling students
a man for a little bit.
So there's a BYU professor.
They just did it last week. They just did the exercise last week.
So there's a BYU professor going out and telling his students to go experience gender bending.
Yeah, he's not going to use the term gender bending, but that's what it is. He tells them, he goes and gives specific examples of what to do. Right? This is not an anomaly. All right? It's not an anomaly. This is happening regularly with several professors. It's not all of them. It's not the majority of them, but it is happening all the time. We've talked before about the whiteness activities that they do.
That was
go out and find whiteness on campus and come back and report on it.
That was toxic.
And it's kind of like, I always try to say, right, let's replace that with Jewishness. Go out onto campus and, I want you to find some Jewishness out there, and I want you to come back and report on it. These are horrible, very normal in other universities activities that these kids are learning.
Okay, so what's the fix, man? What's the fix? You got 5 minutes before we got to go. In 5 minutes, fix the university.
Solve the problems with wokeness in universities.
And you cannot just go through the spiral of silence. You have to speak up. You need these things. It's true. If these things would not happen if the silent majority, would start speaking up and doing something about it, but they don't, because we have a culture in Mormondom of being completely, put on your white shirt, button down, and your tie, and you're like, okay, I don't want conflict. There's no conflict anywhere. Conflict is evil. So if evil is encroaching on me, I have to let it happen. Because niceness is put up at such a high value in our culture. It's above truth, oftentimes. And that's what I think is the problem.
Okay.
There's too much of, I don't want a conflict. I don't want to be part of a conflict. Well, on the other side, they live for the conflict.
Would you say that we, as a people, need to be better about engaging in conflict without getting contentious?
I'm sorry, that's kind of funny to me, but yes, I do. Sure. But there's a difference between standing up for truth and being contentious.
Yeah.
And it's I can to try and conflate, and you didn't do that, I know that, but to try and say, take President Nelson's words of not being contentious and then saying, well, I'm not going to stand up for anything that's true.
Yeah, because that becomes the part of his talk where he said, this shouldn't become peace at any price, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Look, all I'm saying is these people are afraid of Desnat. I'm about to become Desbala. All right, do you understand?
Oh my God!
Kidding.
He's inviting Ben Shapiro.
Thinking of that one, Cwic.
Yeah. No. I mean, look, I just think I love to see the marketplace of ideas. I don't think there's anything wrong with this professor speaking. I think there's definitely something wrong if there are any mechanisms in place that are preventing conservative speakers.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it sounds like people being pansies. Or to quote Ed, actually, I won't quote Ed. That one word you use,
it's dangerous to quote me.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you're being a pansy and saying, well, I'm afraid of the judgment or I could lose my job, and if I say something, I won't get hired here later, so I'm just going to let it happen. Well, if you're saying you're going to let it happen, you revoke your right to complain about it.
I would actually suggest that people who stand up will be better off in the future. You know,
we've got a challenge. Brad.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, we got a challenge on this show. Professor out there, invite Ward Radio to speak.
Yep.
Invite Ward Radio to speak. Invite Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, any of the Daily Wire crowd. Just as an experiment. Now, those guys are expensive, actually, though. It's like $45,000 to get one of those dudes, all right? We're cheaper, only $4,500.
What are you talking about?
So, no, I'm just kidding. Seriously. Do it. I'll make a 1 hour presentation.
I don't want to speak at BYU.
Okay, well, no. Let's just see. Invite us to speak about standing up for values in a secular world of the modern day or whatever, and see if they'll let us come. And then that will be your measurable quantifier. Because I really like what Greg brings up. He says, hey, there's some measurable quantifiers here. Go look up all the visiting speakers that aren't doing the devotional.
Have them invite Greg.
Yeah, they're all leftists. Have them invite Greg.
That's 5.
And so somebody stand up, say, okay, we want to invite a conservative speaker. Let me tell you, I love Near Eastern studies. I love archaeological studies, and BYU has one of the best archaeological departments. And I would consider it an honor to get hired there and to work there and help craft young minds into seeing how there's real lives behind the scriptures, and there's so much depth and insight you get into the Book of Mormon and the Bible when you go to Jerusalem and Israel and Syria and Lebanon and all these other places. It's awesome, and I would love to do that. And I would be mortified mortified of losing that job if I wanted to have a good speaker come and speak. At the same time, I'm more mortified of losing ability to know that job exists at a place like BYU by letting it slowly go down the slippery slope into wokeism. So I would feel morally obligated to actually say, okay, let's get a conservative speaker here. And you know what? I'm documenting every process of this. And if there is a protocol, I'm going to fulfill that protocol. And if it doesn't get done and we don't get the chance to speak, then I'm blowing this up in the press. So somebody's got to get the guts to do that. Become the measurable quantifier. Invite us, invite Greg, invite freaking Ben Shapiro, invite Ed. You know what I'm saying? Whoever you want to invite them. And then if they deny you, well, then you know that it is actual bias. And now we've got an actionable piece of data that we can go on. Am I wrong? Where do I go wrong, Greg?
Just believing that we would be credible, I think, is the one error.
We're the only pro LDS live stream on YouTube.
Period.
I don't know that universities really care about that right now. So
if they're caring about how Lehi's iniquity is comparable to inequity by some no-name professor who's only valid because he thinks leftist doctrine mixed with Book of Mormon stuff, we're just as credible.
I do think that the challenge is good. That trying to find a conservative speaker and see what happens with the process is a good way to give this a shot.
I also, though, feel like that we're painting a picture where there's no conservative guest speakers and it's only liberal, and I don't think that's the case either. I just think that
Greg says
it sounds like Greg was saying the vast majority over the past how many years had been?
Well, I look at about a couple of years ago. Everything that I could find was, I think I had gone back 5 years at that time. So I'm talking like 7 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it may be.
And I didn't say there weren't any, like I said. I mean, there could be people in there that you could say, well, that might be a conservative person.
Yeah.
But not, the people that are invited, like this guy here, he's giving a leftist view and worldview of the Book of Mormon. Mm-hmm. And that's what he does. So that's why he's invited. And, you might, like, for example, they invited a couple of years ago, the woman who's like the Tiger Mom. All right. She's more conservative, but she's not there because she's out expressing a conservatism worldview. She's out there because she's successful and written books and actually a very successful person and has other accomplishments.
Yeah.
And is a great speaker. She's not there to say, let me give you more of a conservative perspective.
Yeah.
On these, right? It's so I'm not saying, that person might be on the right or on the left. I'm saying people that are expressing their points of view politically in their speeches.
Hey, our dean was pushing Jonathan Kozar in the early 2000s when I was at BYU. So I know what you're talking about it being an uphill battle. So anyway,
I got one more thing.
One more thing. Okay.
Just because we had an interesting chat with Jacob Hansen about this, actually. That's where the phrase that I used about learning how to not avoid conflict, but have conflict without being contentious actually was from that conversation with Jacob Hansen. It was something he had said, which I think is actually fascinating. At first I was like, do those contradict? And I was like, no, I don't think they do. Because I think you're totally correct, Greg. And another thing on top of whether or not there's a procedural issue here, I think the other underlying problem to correct is that we can't let niceness be our highest virtue. Right? We need to have true kindness be that virtue, right? Which requires truth as part of it. Learn how to kindly communicate with other people in a way that means you're not just laying down and not standing for truth because it's more comfortable to not stand for that truth, right? So I think that's another thing that we could maybe suggest as a solution. Make sure you're standing up for what's right. Learn to be a peacemaker in the way that God would have you do so by being a truly kind person, but not giving in to the niceness that kind of just buries the problem and I think ultimately makes it worse.
Yeah, niceness is not our highest virtue. I actually really like that phrase. Brad, you're coming out with bangers.
It's not a virtue at all. I'm sorry, it's not a virtue at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Niceness is not a virtue. Niceness means passivity. That's all it is. And maybe sometimes it's right to be passive in something, but to say niceness is a virtue, tell me where it's a virtue. How is doing nothing a virtue? That's not a virtue, right? Being kind is something of commission.
Exactly.
Being nice is omission. And
Well, what about politeness? Politeness is
Sure.
a virtue.
But it's not a very high virtue.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. Kindness is what we need to aim for.
I like this, Greg Matsen. Greg, you're getting a shorter and shorter fuse as the years go along. You got less and less patience for these people. You've given them every inch. They've taken every mile, and I just see it as he gets slightly older, man. Pretty soon you're gonna be that old guy that shows up cursing in a Speedo as he lights his cigar before he goes in the public pool, and when the lifeguard tells him that he can't jump in the deep end because he's too old, and then he needs to stop smoking, he just flicks the stogie at the guy and says, "I buried the bodies in Nom. I don't care what you got to say, young little punk." And then he gives it Speedo a wedgie and jumps in the pool, dude. You're gonna be that guy, man. It's gonna be awesome.
That was the most wildly specific example I have ever heard in my life.
You're really imagining him in a Speedo. Like, I don't know, it's your go-to.
Imagine, fantasize. It's all the same thing. So anyway, all right. Well, Greg, you're one of my favorite guests. Where can people find you? Where can they get more of your special sauce? How can they find you?
You can get on YouTube and look under Cwic Media, Cwic Media, or on any podcast medium and platform. You can find me at Cwic Show, CWIC Show, or you can go to cwicmedia.com.
Okay, cool. We'll let you get back to that drug deal you're doing in the hotel room back there. So,
Oh my gosh.
all right, awesome. Well, guys, it's been real and it's been fun and it's been real fun. As always, if you want to know more, check us out on wardradio.com.